Welcome back to Epic Ethiopian History with Tewodros. Not even one half of the story has ever been told. Now, we've been covering the Kebra Nagast. We've been reading the Kebra Nagast and studying it. And we're about halfway, or a little bit more than halfway, through the text. And we thought it'd be a good time to look into the history of the Kebra Nagast. Right. So right here I have the English translation that was completed by E.A. Wallis Budge in the year 1932. I believe it was 1932. You're right. The Kebra Nagast, or the Kebra Nagast by E.A. Wallis Budge, 1932. You can check it out at sacredtext.com. So I just wanted to touch on a few points because people talk about the validity of the Kebra Nagast, and they like to compare it or they want to measure it against the Bible, and I think they're looking at it all wrong because we're not looking to measure the Kebra Nagast against the Bible. Okay, we're looking at a historical document provided by the people of Ethiopia. Hey, why don't we just read what it says here, right? A careful study of the Kebra Nagast made while translating the work into English. These are the words of E.A. Wallis Budge, right? So he says, a careful study of the Kebra Nagast made while translating the work into English has convinced me that the opening statements in the colophon are substantially correct, and that it is quite possible that in its original form, the Arabic version of the book was translated from Coptic MSS, which means manuscripts, belonging to the Patriarchal Library at Alexandria, that's in Egypt, and copies of this Arabic translation, probably enlarged and greatly supplemented by the scribes in the various monasteries of Egypt, would soon find their way into Ethiopia or Abyssinia via the Blue Nile. The principal theme of the Kebra Nagast, example, the descent of the kings of Ethiopia from Solomon, king of Israel, and the queen of the south, or the queen of Sheba, was certainly well known in Ethiopia for centuries before the Kebra Nagast was compiled. So before the Kebra Nagast was compiled, it was well known in Ethiopia for centuries before the Kebra Nagast was compiled that the kings of Ethiopia descended from Solomon, the king of Israel, and the queen of the south, or the queen of Sheba, Negist Saba. So it was well known in Ethiopia for centuries before the Kebra Nagast was compiled, according to E.A. Wallis Budge. Right? But the general treatment of it in this work was undoubtedly greatly influenced by supplementary legends and additions, which in their simplest forms seem to me to have been derived from Coptic and even Syrian writers. It is well known that the Solomonic line of kings continued to rule over Ethiopia until that somewhat mythical woman, Esther, or Judith, as some call her, or Yodit, succeeded in dethroning Dilnaad and placing on the throne Merak Teklahaimanot, the first of the 11 Zagwe kings, who dispossessed the Solomonic kings for 354 years. AD 914 to 1268, and reigned at Aksum. Written accounts of the descent of the kings of Ethiopia from Solomon must have existed in Ethiopia before the close of the 9th century AD, right? Before the close of the 9th century AD. So, written accounts of the descent of the kings of Ethiopia from Solomon must have existed in Ethiopia before the close of the 9th century AD. And these were, no doubt, drawn up in Ethiopic and in Arabic during the persecution of the Christians in Egypt and Ethiopia by the Muhammadans in the 10th, 11th, and 12th centuries. Many churches and their libraries of manuscripts perished. We may, however, be sure that the Solomonic kings who settled in the province of Showa during the period of the Zagwe domination managed to preserve chronological lists and other historical documents that contained the annals of their predecessors. The second part of the colophon mentions Abuliz, and Abu Lefraj as being concerned with translating the book into Arabic, and makes one Isaac, um, who was apparently the Ethiopian translator, asks why they did not translate it into Ethiopic. In answer to this question, he says that the Kebra Nagast appeared during the period of the Zagwe rule, when it is obvious that the publication of any work that supported the claims of the Solomonic dynasty, of the Solomonic kings, would meet with a very unfavorable reception and cause the death of its editors and translators. Therefore, it is fairly certain that the Kebra Nagast existed in Arabic in some form during the 3.5 centuries of the Zagwe rule, and that no attempt was made to multiply copies of it in Ethiopic until the restoration of the line of Solomonic kings in the days of Yekono Amlak, AD 1270 to 1285. The Ethiopic work as we know it now is probably in much the same state as it was in the days of Gebre Meskel, Amde Sion, in the first half of the 14th century of our era. Of Isaac, we unfortunately know nothing, but there seem to be no good grounds for attributing the complete authorship of the Kebra Nagast to him. I believe this Isaac they're referring to here is Isaac Nabur-id, the Nabur-id. So let's continue. Let's go. We'll come back to that. Yet he was evidently not merely a scribe or copyist. And when he speaks of the greatness of the toil which he undertook for the sake of the glory of the heavenly Zion, and Ethiopia and her king, he seems to suggest that he was the general redactor or editor who directed the work of his devoted companions Yemharene Ab, Hizbe Christos, Andrew, Philip, and Mehariab. Now, however important the Kebra Nagast may have been considered by the Ethiopians in bygone centuries, and notwithstanding the almost superstitious awe with which the book is still regarded in Abyssinia, we are hardly justified in accepting it as a connected historical document. But it is undoubtedly a very fine work, and many sections of it merit careful consideration and study. Remember, this is not my words. We're reading here the words of E.A. Wallis Budge. This is his introduction to the Kebra Nagast that he translated. For many of the statements in it, there are historical foundations. So, he admits that there are historical foundations in the Kebra Nagast, and the greater part of the narrative is based upon legends and sayings and traditions, many of which are exceedingly ancient. So he's saying that a lot of it is based upon legends and sayings and traditions, which are exceedingly ancient, right? So the people of the land accepted these things as true. It was something that was said, it was tradition in the land of Ethiopia. These were sayings and traditions that were exceedingly ancient. So it's not something that was like new. It was old. These are old sayings, very ancient sayings. So sometimes, when you have very ancient traditions and ancient sayings, some of the details may become slightly different. Then they're not exactly on point. Like the dates may be slightly off, or. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is not true. It just means that the details are not 100% perfect. Okay. However, the core of those sayings and traditions, the core of those sayings and traditions would actually be true, right? Or there is some grounds on which you can come to the understanding that there had to be some event that took place, and that's why the people in the land are saying these things since ancient times. The legends and traditions are derived from many sources and can be traced to the Old Testament and Chaldean Targums, to Syriac works like the Book of the Bee, to Coptic lives of saints, to ancient Quranic stories and commentaries, to apocryphal books like the Book of Adam and Eve, the Book of Enoch, Kufale, which means the Book of Divisions. Kufale is also known in English as Jubilees. The instruction of Saint Peter to his disciple Clement, the Kalamentos, the life of Hannah, the mother of the Virgin Mariam, the Book of the Pearl, and the Ascension of Isaiah. Side by side with the extracts from these works, we have long sections in which works attributed to Gregory Thaumaturgus, to Timotheus, Patriarch of Constantinople, and to Cyril are quoted at great length. So some of these books that are mentioned here are also, for example, the Book of Enoch, Kufale. Those books are included within the Ethiopian Holy Bible to this day. So they are not all of these books are considered not non apocrypha in the Ethiopian Church. In the Ethiopian Church, a lot of these books are not apocrypha. The Book of Enoch and Kufale. Okay, so what E.A. Wallis Budge is saying is that the legends and traditions are derived from many sources. So it doesn't mean that he's not saying that the work is um, not true. He's just saying that the sources, he believes that that it's a compilation of different text, of information from different text, right, or from different historical documents, right. The Old Testament and the Chaldean Targums, the Syriac work like the Book of the Bee, Coptic lives of saints, the ancient Quranic stories and commentaries, to apocryphal books like the Book of Adam and Eve. Again, the Book of Enoch and Kuvali are not apocryphal in the Ethiopian Church. They are included in our Bible. The instructions of St. Peter to his disciple Clement, the Kalamentos. Now, the instructions of St. Peter to his disciple Clement, that wouldn't be in the Bible, right? So let's continue. The life of Hannah. So what I'm saying is, even though some of these books aren't in the Bible, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are not, they are not true. That doesn't mean that. Okay, that's not what it means. The Ascension of Isaiah, right? The Ascension of Isaiah. I believe I can. Yeah, that we have that in Ethiopic. The Ascension of Isaiah. All right. So the source. So E. A. Wallis Budge. This is what he believes. He believes these to be some of the sources of the content we find in the Kebra Nagast. However, he stated earlier, again, he stated earlier that in Ethiopia, the people, since ancient times, the people had these sayings and these traditions before, long before. Where is it? Let's see if I can find it here. One second here. Oh yeah, here we go. So right here, the principal theme of the Kebra Nagast. The principal theme of the Kebra Nagast, the descent of the kings of Ethiopia from Solomon, king of Israel, and the queen of the south, or the queen of Sheba, was certainly well known in Ethiopia for centuries before the Kebra Nagast was compiled. But the general treatment of it in this work was undoubtedly greatly influenced by supplementary legends and additions, which in their simplest forms seem to me to have been derived from Coptic and even Syrian writers. Now, this is E. A. Wallis Budge here saying this, right? We're not talking about what the Ethiopian Orthodox Church teachings are in terms of the origin of the Kebra Nagast. Okay, we're looking at E. A. Wallis Budge right now. I just want to make that clear again. We're looking at the work of E. A. Wallis Budge here, the English work. Okay, and let's go to the beginning of the introduction. Let's go back to the beginning, right? So it's talking about the manuscripts of the Kebra Nagast and their arrival in Europe. The labors of Bruce, Dillman, Pretorius, Wright, Zotenberg, and Bezold. King John's letter to Lord Granville, date of compilation of the Kebra Nagast, the Ethiopian work based on Coptic and Arabic sources. So it says, the Kebra Nagast, or the Book of the Glory of the Kings of Ethiopia, has been held in the highest esteem and honor throughout the length and breadth of Abyssinia for 1,000 years at least. And even today, it is believed by every educated man in that country to contain the true history of the origin of the Solomonic line of kings in Ethiopia, and is regarded as the final authority on the history of the conversion of the Ethiopians from the worship of the sun, moon, and stars to that of the Lord God of Israel. The existence of the Kebra Nagast appears to have been unknown in Europe until the second quarter of the 16th century, when scholars began to take an interest in the country of Prester John through the writings of Francisco Alvarez, chaplain to the embassy with which Emmanuel, king of Portugal, sent to David, king of Ethiopia, under the leadership of Don Rodrigo de Lima, 1520 to 1527. Right? In the collection of documents concerning this embassy, Alvarez included an account of the king of Ethiopia and of the manners and customs of his subjects, and a description in Portuguese of the habits of the Ethiopians. And I'm going to skip over this right here. Um, okay, so this account was greatly amplified, right? It's got right here, right? Opreste Joam das Indias, right? And his Historia de las Cosas de Ethiopia. Okay, this account was greatly amplified. So in the first quarter of the 16th century, P.N. Godinho published some traditions about King Solomon and his son Menelik, derived from the Kebra Nagast, and further information on the subject was included by the Jesuit priest Manuel Almeida, 1580 to 1646, in his Historia Geral de Ethiopia, which does not appear to have been published in its entirety. Manuel Almeida was sent out as a missionary to Ethiopia and had abundant means of learning about the Kebra Nagast at first hand, and his manuscript Historia is a valuable work. His brother Apollinare also went out to the country as a missionary and was, with his two companions, stoned to death in Tigray. So the Ethiopians were not accepting these Jesuit teachings. They were going there as missionaries. So they were. So two of his brothers, his brother and two of his companions, were stoned to death in Tigray. All right. Now let's go back here. Let's go back here now to who's this guy, Francisco Alvarez. So beforehand, I went and I checked out. I was checking him out, right? Francisco Alvarez, Ethiopia as a part of India at the time. Who preste Joam das Indias, right? 1540. Now I was looking into the work, this book here. Let's see if I can minimize this. The narrative of the Portuguese embassy to Abyssinia during the years 1520 to 1527. All right, Prester John, legendary character. Okay, publication date 1881. So let's take a look at something here. I want to touch on something here. All right. So where is it? Where is it? Oh, here it is. So it says here. Okay, so this is which chapter is this? 30. What's this Roman numeral here? 30 VL. Anyways, not sure at the moment. It's on page 78 if you want to check it out. So amongst these peaks where we were still going in the parts to the west are wonderful lands and very great lordships, among which is a very good town named Aksumo. He's talking about Aksum. This is Aksum. But he's saying Aksumo. It's Aksum. And it is 2 days' journey from the town of St. Michael, always between these peaks. We stayed in it for 8 months by order of the Prester John. This town was the city, chamber, and abode, as they say, of the Queen Saba, Nagist Saba, who took the camels laden with gold to Solomon when he was building the Temple of Jerusalem. There is in this town a very noble church in which we found a very great chronicle, written in the language of the country, and it stated in its commencement how it had been written first in Hebrew and afterwards put into Greek, and from Greek into Chaldean, and from Chaldee into the Abyssinian tongue, in which it is now, in which it now is, and it begins thus: how the Queen Sabas herein related the great and rich works which Solomon had begun in Jerusalem. She determined to go and see them, and she loaded certain camels with gold to give for these works. And on arriving near the city and being about to cross a lake, which they passed by some bridges, she dismounted and worshipped the beams and said, "Please God, my feet shall not touch the timber on which the Savior of the world has to hang." And she made a circuit of the lake, and went to see Solomon, and induced him to withdraw those beams from there. And she came to the works, and offered her gifts, and said, "These works are not such as they told me in richness and beauty, because their beauty and richness has no equal, so that they are greater than what was related to me, so much so that the tongues of men cannot tell their nobility and richness. And much I grieve for the small gift which I brought. I will return to my countries and lordships, and I will send whatever abounds for the weak works of gold and blackwood, for whatever abounds for the works of gold and blackwood to inlay." While she was at Jerusalem, Solomon had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant of a son, and remained at Jerusalem until she brought him forth. After she was able to travel, she left her son and returned to her country, and sent from it much gold and blackwood to inlay the works. And her son grew up to the age of 17 years, and among the many other sons that Solomon had, this one was so proud. Okay. And her son grew up to the age of 17 years. And among the many other sons that Solomon had, this one was so proud that he outraged the people of Israel and all the country of Judea. And the people came to Solomon and said to him, "We are not able to maintain so many kings as you have got, for all your sons are kings, especially this one of Queen Saba. She is a greater lady than you. Send him to his mother, for we are not able to maintain him." Then Solomon sent him very honorably, giving him the officers that are usual in a king's household, as I will relate in its place. And besides, he gave him in order that he might rest on the road the country of Gaza, which is in the land of Egypt, and he made his journey to the country of his mother, where he was a very great ruler. The Chronicle says that he ruled from sea to sea, and that he had 60 ships in the Indian Sea. This book of Chronicles is very large, and I only took from it the beginnings. In this town, we're going to the next chapter now, is how St. Philip declared a prophecy of Isaiah to the eunuch of Queen Candace, or Kandake.